Hello, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to do a preview of the upcoming Transcontinental race. Now this year's race is a pretty different route. It starts in Norway and finishes down in Kalamata in the south of Greece, which is the first time it's run north to south. Traditionally it's gone, apart from the one time, west to east. And in this video I'm going to give you an overview of the route and a very brief rundown of names to watch. What I will say though is that I recorded a podcast with Becky, my co-host, and David Eyre, who's the race director, and in that we go into a lot more detail about riders to watch. So I'm not going to cover the same ground here, but I think having a visual preview of the race parkour is a bit better. So let's head over to Ride with GPS, and this is how the parkours are presented to those taking part. Incidentally, I'm racing myself this year, so I won't be doing any daily updates as I did the last few years, unfortunately. This is it on that front. However, I'm going to do a collaboration with Broomwagon Podcast, just doing kind of some voice notes during the race, and I think a few others are going to be involved as well. And also you can just follow the Lost Dot social media, and they've got really good reportage on their website around the race. So that's the best way to follow the sort of the day-to-day action. So onto the route. So when you apply to do the TCR, you get presented with a race manual and all these segments. So it's a free route race if you weren't familiar. And as you can see, there's segments dotted across Europe. And the first segment starts in Trondheim, which is where the race begins. So I think it's 3 degrees below the Arctic Circle. So basically starting in the Arctic Circle. And it's a pretty long first sector, so 121 miles. If you go in miles, I don't know what that is in K. I've not got my conversion head on yet, but I'm sure I'll be able to do that off the cuff by the end of TCR. And as you can see, I mean, it's not massively mountainous, but it's certainly not flat. And you can see there's a lot of little kind of tiny ups and downs. So it's not like the other year when it was straight into the Picos de Europa, but it's going to be a tough grind, I think. And the north of Norway is not exactly flat. If we go onto the Google terrain map here, you can see it's quite lumpy, I think is fair to say. But that's a start. So the riders are going to be pretty tight together, I'd imagine, for this first section. The race starts it's 8 p.m. I think, but as it's so far north, there's barely going to be any kind of darkness, nighttime. Almost going to be light the whole night. So the other race that starts in this area is of course the Bright Midnight, which is a gravel race, and I guess the clue's in the name there. So the Bright Midnight starts in Tolga, which I think most riders will likely pass through, just off the end of this section here, somewhere around here. I believe it's down here somewhere. Tolga, so this is where Justina Slovakia is based, and the Bright Midnight is based. So gives you a bit of an idea. So if you've seen the coverage of the Bright Midnight, you'll know that the weather was a bit wild, and I think it could be quite chilly on this first night especially. But you can see the kind of terrain and the road's pretty good here. So I think it's going to be relatively fast. I mean, the level of the field nowadays is so high. So, I mean, it's almost definitely going to be super fast. And then basically the riders then have to link up with the other mandated sections and the checkpoints. And as you can see, if I zoom in on the kind of the overview here, there's a couple of sectors in Norway. So Parkour 1A and Parkour 1B with control point 1. So we'll have a little look. So 1A, you can see is only a small sector, but you can basically, you have to complete the sectors, you have to go obviously from the start to the finish. Doesn't mean you can't go from the finish to the start and then back again. Sometimes there's sort of dead end climbs on the TCR, and that's the way it's done. Sometimes it makes more sense, depends if you're more inclined for tarmac or gravel. But this looks like it is a gravel sector. You can see the little community photo here, and as you can see, it is gravel, but it looks very well driven and pretty smooth. So I don't think it's going to cause too many issues on road bikes and road tires. But it's that very typical Norwegian terrain, and as you can see by that photo, it's not guaranteed to be warm. So I think conditions will be relatively challenging on the first. Certainly for to CP1, I think you're in the bulk of the mountains there. CP1 is in Flom, I think it is. So you've got the checkpoint here. So the checkpoint is just outside of town. It looks like it's a little guest house here, and then we have a mandatory section after that. And again, you can look at the community photo layer on Rub GPS to get a feel for what's coming. So big mountains all around, fairly remote by TCR standards. Generally, the TCR, because it is, in mainland Europe, there's not much. There's not many places when you're properly remote, and resupply is fairly regular. However, obviously these sections here in the first part of TCR will be a little bit more remote than normal. But you can see here, this is the track, so it's looking like it's a gravel track. Again, not too easy to get too much intel on exactly how good the gravel is. The Google Man. Actually, the Google Man works, but there we go. So, not horrendously rough, but again, you want to be careful on a road bike. So yeah, that's going to be the first kind of place where maybe you could have a disaster. But again, looks all right here. Chance of rain in those mountains, so the track looks fairly solid, but I'm sure there'll be sections where it could get a bit wetter. So that's the first mandatory parkour section. So that's guiding riders through basically the hillier part of Norway, and then I guess the next section is the ferry games. So if we go over to the overview here, you can see that then there's nothing really in terms of official sections until Czechia and Slovakia. So again, a double checkpoint. The first one, 1A, is in Czechia, and then we've got a parkour and a checkpoint in Slovakia. So that begs the question: how do you get there? You've got to cross the Baltic. And obviously that means ferries, and the ferry games have been an exciting part of the TCR over the last couple of years. I suspect most people will end up going through Poland. It's not the only route. There's three, maybe 4 ports you could get a ferry across the Baltic. It is limited, so you can't sort of get a ferry from Gothenburg or somewhere like that down, or Denmark, across here. You are forced sort of somewhat south. But yeah, that's going to be the first big tactical game, and the gaps in the ferries are not they're not consistent. It's not like crossing, say, the English Channel, where there's a ferry every half hour almost. At times there's 6-7 hour gaps between ferries. Other times there's only an hour between ferries. But there's going to be choices between ports as well. So the first exciting part, from a dot watcher's point of view, probably the first stressful part, speaking from a racer's point of view, is the ferry game, and how are you going to get from Sweden across to the mainland? Are you going to end up in Poland, which I think is most likely? Options in Germany as well. But essentially you want to be heading south and onto this parkour here. So we'll check out this one. As you can see, it's a bit of a twisty one, and there's a fair bit of climbing and a bit of gravel too. And it kind of it looks like it's not too bad on the whole. You can see it's like a viewpoint up here. So it's a reservoir, isn't it? So there's a viewpoint there, and you can see the tarmac road in the background here. So it looks like a lap of the reservoir up on top of this mountain. A bit of gravel over here, and then, as always, there's probably going to be some kind of trick to getting down here. I suspect there'll be some kind of gravel in this section here, as there's no Google Man. So yeah, again, it's never simple on the TCR, is it? And you think it's straightforward, and then you end up on some rough track. So again, could be a bit of excitement around here, but this is just the predecessor to the second part, and you can see here an overview of the area. Not high mountains, but certainly enough to be kind of tired when you get to the top. And see various viewpoints as well. I'm pretty sure that might be involved somewhere along the line. So yeah, that is parkour 1A, and that leads us across to parkour 2A, and then 2B across here. Again, a little bit of off-road. I've heard it's kind of relatively rough, not super smooth, from a few people that have ridden it. So yeah, that's again starts in the middle of nowhere, so you've got options as to how you're going to find your way up onto this parkour sector. We'll look at the community photo here and see what that is. mainly trees. So yeah, lots of woods in there. And then I guess the crux of it is this big climb up into the Tatra Mountains. Now there was looking like there could be an option. So if you see here, Chopok is the big mountain here, and you can see this vague path over the top. And if you kind of put the Google Man on there, if I got it in the right spot, you can see it's quite a well laid hiking path. Now, until a couple of days ago, this was looking like an option. However, the rules were that you're not allowed to ride your bike in the national park. So it kind of gave the option that potentially from the top of the parkour, you could hike over with your bike. However, in the last day or so, the park authorities have said that there'll be fines for anyone who does push their bike over that section, which is a bit of a shame because it did give us a few options, but essentially it means that riders are now not going to get that kind of off-road hike as an option, and they're going to have to ride sort of back down, trace backwards and around one way or the other around the Low Tatra National Park. So again, taking a bit of drama out, but also probably quite a bit of stress for some of the riders, because again, there's always decisions on TCR, and that's just one less routing decision that's been taken away. So that is the sort of the double section, 2A and 2B, so Czechia and Slovakia, and then we start getting towards the good bit. So traditionally the TCR has always had a good number, a good amount of distance in the Balkans. It's kind of the heartlands of the TCR, and this year the checkpoint 3 is in Sarajevo, and Sarajevo is it's just like a classic part of the history of TCR. Like I rode there 2015, I think, went through Sarajevo. There wasn't checkpoint, but there was checkpoints in the area, and it's been kind of a feature in a number of editions. This one's a pretty cool one. We spoke to David about this on the podcast, and it's actually, I'm just going to zoom in and show you. So it looks like a bit of an interesting parkour, as you can see, like down the hill, around the corner, back up again. But when you look closer, this section here is actually, I find a good section. It's actually the bobsleigh track that was used in I think it was the 1992 Winter Olympics in Sarajevo. And the parkour actually goes down the track itself. So you actually end up riding down this concrete track, which should be pretty cool. It's a pretty unique experience. And I think it's going to be pretty exciting. It's certainly going to make for some pretty cool photos, I think, of the event. And then the actual checkpoint itself is at the top of a hill. So that's the checkpoint in Sarajevo. And it's pretty unique. It's going to be pretty exciting, and there's only one parkour sector there. There's no kind of twin section, so that's going to give some interesting route choices from the Slovakian sectors. Most riders, I suspect, will end up going across Hungary, and then there's options, whether you come in more from the north or a bit more through Serbia, hit Croatia. That's kind of one of the cruxes of the route choice, I suspect, and I think we'll probably see some splits there as the race develops and riders get down there. After that, we're just in classic TCR territory, as I said, the Balkans. We've got another split parkour. So we've got one in Albania. You can just see in the north of Albania. So this long section here. And then there's a control point further south. The control point's not really shown on this map, but I can show you where it is. So basically this section at the top, it looks pretty cool, actually. It looks like it's primarily tarmac. That was a big word for this time in the morning. There's a lot of development going on in the Balkans, and some of the roads there can be pretty good. Some of them can be pretty bad. This one looks okay, but it is the Balkans, so you never do really know. I'm kind of expecting, just judging by this, that it's going to be primarily tarmac. But famous last words and everything. You do never know when it comes to the TCR. But I've been in the area, and I'm pretty familiar with it. And Peshkopi was actually a checkpoint on the accursed race. I think it might have even been one on TCR in previous years as well. The actual CP itself is on the border of Greece, so the checkpoint will be here. There we go, it's noted. So the checkpoint in Albania is very close to the Greek border. I'm pretty sure this may well have been a checkpoint before, or certainly a parkour sector. So again, this is going to be a route choicing kind of a route choice that riders have to make. There's various options. You could cross a few more borders and go through some of the other Balkan countries, or stay in Albania. There is also banned roads as well, which you have to factor in. There's a whole kind of resource map with all of that on there. Planning is a bit of a puzzle, but it's it makes for some interesting choices. And for me, the TCR is all about this Balkan section. It's just all my happy memories from years gone past. It's where the drama normally happens. Just exciting, and it's good to see Albania and the Balkans back on the route. And then the final checkpoint, again, a new finish, Kalamata. It's a long old final parkour, 107 odd miles. So just under 200k, and it's around 3,000 meters of climbing. So although we're not crossing any of the bigger ranges, I mean, last year there was the Pyrenees and the Alps, so you're not going to get the high elevation of that, but there's always climbing in the Balkans. They're pretty undulating area, pretty rugged mountains, and I've seen kind of the Hellenic mountain race finishes close to Patras, and you can see this area. It is pretty much a mini mountain range, so it's going to be a tough finish, starting in the it's actually the place where the original Olympic Games took place, which is pretty cool. You can see ancient Olympia, so that's going to be a pretty historic place to ride through and do a bit of sightseeing on the way, and then this pretty savage final parkour before dropping down to the finish in Kalamata. I suppose the good thing is that it is a good chunk of downhill before the finish, so at least you might have forgotten how miserable it is in the heat of the day climbing through here. That is something, as always, we need to talk about. I mean, you've seen the heat waves in Europe and France. It's always hot in the Balkans. If a heat wave hits the Balkan area, it's going to be pretty tough for all the riders. And of course, we talked about the start as well. It was snowing and below freezing for the Bright Midnight only a couple of weeks back, and it's not guaranteed to be that cold, but also it's probably going to be fairly cold to start with. Single digits the first couple of nights in Norway, and then obviously it'll get warmer, I suspect, as it goes on. So a huge temperature swing, looking like it's likely to be the longest TCR ever in terms of distance. Obviously depends on routes and what riders have chosen. It should be good to watch. So keep an eye on it's on Follow My Challenge. I've not seen the Follow My Challenge page yet, but by the time you see this, it might well be out. So that's the route of the Transcontinental race, and it's number 12. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish up with a couple of riders to watch. Now, as I said, I'm not going to go into depth here because we had quite an in-depth chat on the podcast with David, and there's so many riders to watch now that I'd be here for hours if I was going to do that. But I've just picked out 3 riders, 3 previous winners. I think that's probably the best way to highlight them. They've got to be favourites if they've won before. Start with Jana Kessenheimer. She's won the women's race the past 2 years, going for 3 in a row, and she's regularly finishing within the top 10. And she's super strong and real strong climber. And this route gets hillier as you go on, so I suspect she's going to be pretty tough to beat as the race enters the second half, and very experienced now as well. Another 2-time winner, Christoph Strasser. He's kind of won a couple in a row, and then he's been struggling. Well, not struggling, but the level's going up so high. He was just outside the podium last year, so I'm pretty sure he'll be back and be wanting to try and take that victory again. Christoph is always going to be one to watch, and super strong, super experienced, pretty metronomic as well. So he normally comes pretty strong near the end. And then only a one-time winner, but probably one of the most impressive riders in the last couple of years across the bikepacking world is Robin Gempele. Obviously, last year he won the Tour Divide. Previous year, though, he won his first Transcontinental race. Robin doesn't do stuff by halves. He's not coming here to come second. So for me, I think Robin is probably one of the very top favourites, and very much looking forward to seeing how Robin gets on this year. As I said, there's so many more riders that I could mention, both across the men's and the women's field. Lots of newcomers. It's going to be really exciting to watch, and it's definitely going to be good dot watching for the next couple of weeks. Check out the podcast for a full rundown of riders to watch. In the meantime, thanks very much. Check out Broomwagon Podcast for my little updates as I go along, and I'll catch you on the other side. So thanks for watching.